In this video, I will be showing you how to make a stop motion animation using After Effects. Before we get started, I'd like to give you guys a few pointers. Number one, you have to make sure that you keep your camera or your phone, whatever you're taking your photos on, extremely still by mounting it onto something. This will make for less editing later. Number two is that with a stop motion animation, it's important to make small movements and take lots of photos. The animation we will be working on today has about 25 photos, and it will end up only being a few seconds long. It might even be a couple seconds long. So in order to have a nice length for your animation, you should have at least 100 or so photos. This will also depend on how long each frame will be up at a time. And number three is when you're taking your photos, keep space around your word or phrase in case you need to crop it later. This is just so that you have a little bit of wiggle room in case you need to move things around, edit it a little bit, things like that. There's no set time requirement for this part of the assignment, but if you like to go this route, then make sure you take enough photos. If you'd like to make something shorter, I'd suggest making a GIF in Photoshop instead. It's going to depend on what your idea is going to be for this GIF or animation part of the assignment. So, all right, before anything else, let's just get started. I have all of my photos in this folder here called Panda. It's a really simple little animation that we're going to be doing. And first things first, we're going to go ahead and open up After Effects. If it's not already in your dock, then if you go to Finder, Applications, you will find your After Effects in here. And then just double click this. I already opened mine because it takes forever to open up on my computer. So once you have this open, you want to go ahead and click on New Project. And this is what your screen is going to look like more or less. Then you're going to go up to File, Import File. And you're going to find that folder with your images. And then you're going to select all of them. Once you have selected all of the images, you want to make sure that it says Enable All Acceptable Files and that these things down here are unchecked. Then you're going to click Open. So once you do that, you'll notice that all of your images have flooded this project panel right over here. Anything that you import, whether it's audio, other videos, images, Illustrator files, Photoshop files, it's all going to end up in your project file first. So once you have it all over here, you'll notice that there's this tiny little icon here that says Create a New Composition. It kind of looks like a little reel with some shapes inside of it. While you still have all of these selected, you're just going to click and drag it over that icon like such, and then you'll see that this new dialog box has opened up. Couple things in here. You want to make sure that single composition is selected. And for this part over here where it says use dimensions from, it's just going to use the dimensions from your the photos that you'll be using, but that's going to be something that we change later on. The still duration, right now it's set to 2 seconds. Now 2 seconds is really, really long for your each image to be up. You want to make sure that it says about 2 frames. So I'm just going to go and edit that so that it says 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2. So that means that it's going to only be up for 2 frames rather than 2 whole seconds. And then you want to make sure that sequence layers is selected, but overlap is not selected. This will make sure that all of your images are one after the other rather than all happening at the same time. So it's all just going to be in order, and then click OK. And once you click OK, you will see that After Effects has so kindly put all of your images side by side over here. So if you, on the right side over here, go up to Preview, it will show you like all of the stuff that you'll need to play, but the shortcut to play back is just the spacebar. So if you hit the spacebar, it will play back what your animation looks like right away. It's going to take a couple seconds to really, like you'll notice that it's playing much faster now, and a second ago it was really slow because it was kind of rendering as it was going. If I hit the spacebar again, it will stop wherever it was. So a few things, this thing right here, this blue thing is called the current time indicator. This is something that you can click and drag to kind of like see how all of your images are kind of looking and in the order that they're in. This top bar over here is basically like zooming in and out of your timeline. If you want it to be, want to see the whole timeline, you can scooch it all the way to the end. If you want to see closer look, you can scooch it out like that. And then the third thing is that this bar over here is the time ruler. Basically, if you bring this down to here, when you save your work, it's only going to save up until this portion, regardless of what's happening after. So you want to make sure that this bar this bar selects the whole body of work that you'd like to show. So again, I'm going to press the space bar, and this is what it's looking like. You know that we only have about 25 photos, and all in all it is only like a second or so long, a little bit more than a second long. So say that you want it to go a little bit slower than this, I'm gonna just go ahead and undo, do Command Z, and you can do that a few times until the images are all gone, until you get to this point. Once you get here, you want to go ahead and select all of your images again. It's going to be important to just select all of them by holding Command A, and then you're going to click and drag over the new composition again. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 3 this time instead of 2. Click OK. I'm a little zoomed out. I can always go to fit up to 100% so I can see. Press the space bar and you'll notice that it is rendering still. And now it's looking at like it's a little bit more of a comfortable pace than it was before. I think before it was just a little bit too fast, and now we're at about 2 seconds. So remember again, like if you want to make a nice sized animation, you want to make sure that you're taking tons of photos. If you have 25 photos playing at about 3 frames per second, that's going to make a 2-second long animation. So say that if you want a 5-second long animation, let's do some math here. So that means that you're going to need maybe about less than 150 photos, but still over 100 photos in order to achieve that at 3 frames per second. So you could be done here, but there's one major thing that you need to make sure that you do, and that is that right now my document size is going to be enormous because each of these photos are really, really huge in size. So first things first, I want to make my composition size a little bit smaller. So what you want to do is go up to composition settings, and in here where it says width and height, it says 4032 width and 3024 height. That is just way too enormous for my liking. There is a preset here that's going to work really well, and that's HDTV 1080 29.97. That's going to make it a 1920 by 1080, and it's going to give you some good settings to work with. And then go ahead and click OK. So now you'll notice that we're super zoomed in, and that's because, like I mentioned before, our images were enormous. So in your timeline down here, you want to select all of your images, do Command A, or you can just select them all by clicking the first one and then going down and Shift holding the last one. So there's a couple ways to do it. The shortcut is just the letter S so that you can scale. The long way to do it is if you just click on this arrow and then this arrow and then go down to scale. This is all while you have the whole thing selected, all of the images. and then you're gonna go and drag this down so that it is a more comfortable size. So this is looking much better. It's still a little bit cut off, so while everything is still selected here, I'm going to just nudge my images down a bit by holding down the down arrow a couple times, like such. And then I can just close this arrow up and then press the spacebar again to see how it's looking, let it render. Alright, so I want to nudge it down a little bit more, Command A. And then another shortcut is the letter P for position. This will just make it a little bit easier. If I drag this one, it's going to move it left to right, and then I'm going to undo that, Command Z. And then if you move this one, it will move it up and down. So I'm just going to move it down a bit, like such, and then hit this arrow back up, press the space bar. That's looking much more comfortable for my liking. Alright, I'm going to press the space bar again. One last thing I want to show you here before we render this video is if you wanted to edit a certain photo, like for example, if you were taking your pictures and you accidentally nudged your phone and it was a little bit off, but you continued taking your photos anyways, you can also edit it in After Effects. So you'll notice that between this image and this image, there is a little bit of a jump happening. So I'm not going to be able to make it perfect here, but I can try my best. And this is the whole reason why it's super important to make sure that you leave space around your images. And we might even have to scale everything up a tiny bit so that there's a little bit more space, because I can see that the edge of my photo is just a tiny bit outside of the edge of my composition. So I might have to scale it up a tiny bit so that I have that little bit of wiggle room. So once between these two images, there's like a little bit of a jump, you can tell by the background. But then the rest of it is like pretty well lined up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the images between this one and the rest, and then I'm going to put my thinking cap on and see which way I need to nudge everything. So it looks like from here to here, my image goes a little bit to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and nudge all of these images a little bit to the left. So I'm just going to do that a little bit at a time, and then I'm going to check my work, see how it's going. Still pretty. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and nudge it more to the left. Alright, so that's looking a little bit better. I'm going to nudge it up. I think I nudged it too much to the right, so I'm going to nudge it to the nudging it up. Guys, this is not easy to line up, which is why it's super important to make sure that things are nice and smooth when you are taking your photos. It looks like I might need to scale it up a tiny bit as well, so let's see if that made a difference. Let's do 48.5 instead. Put it to the left. I don't know if scaling it up was a good idea, so let's scale it back to what it was. Alright, I think this is as close as I'm going to get it. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of these and press the S button for the shortcut to scale. And then I'm going to make it just a bit larger so that I can have everything showing up on my screen. Close this back up, press the spacebar to see the work. So it's definitely not perfect, but it's a little bit closer than it was before. And I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to render this. Sorry for that really long live editing there. Okay, so next what you want to do in order to save this, and also by the way, it does not need to be a rectangle like such. If you wanted to make yours a square composition, that's perfectly fine too. If you go to composition settings, if you make this 1080 by 1080, I think that would be a really comfortable size for a square rather than 1920 by 1080 being a rectangle. So in order to go ahead and save what you have here, you're going to go up to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and then where it says Output Module, you're going to click on the word Lossless, and you're going to see this dialog box open up. So for the format, you want to make sure that it says QuickTime if you're working on a Mac computer. And then for the format options, you just want to make sure that everything is good in here. Animation is fine for this project. Go ahead and click OK. And everything else looks fine. Go ahead and click OK. And then the last thing is where it says Output To, where it says Not Yet Specified. You want to click on that. And this is basically going to tell you where it's going to save and end up. So I'm going to put it in here and call it Panda Demo. Just going to rename it and then hit save. So once you have that saved, once you have that relocated to where you want it to go, you're going to go ahead and click on render, and you're going to wait for a sound that's going to appear when this is over. There it is. That will indicate that you have saved your movie file. Also, while you're here, go ahead and take the opportunity to save your After Effects file. Go to File, Save. I'm going to save it in the same folder, pandademo.aep. Go ahead and click Save. And then I'm just going to minimize this. So I'll go into my folder and you'll see the After Effects file as well as the movie file. Now over here it says that the movie file is 429 megabytes large, so that's still quite a large file size, which is why it's taking a second to convert here. If I hadn't resized my file, then it would have been even larger, and I'm going to show you how to make this file size a little bit smaller without losing too much of the quality still. So this is the end, the whole video. It's 2 seconds long. Click play, and there it is. If you're making a stop motion animation, it is not necessary for you to make your animation loop, but if you're making a GIF, it should be looping. Now, how do I make this a little bit smaller of a size? So go to File, Export As. You can try 1080 to begin with. And then I'm going to just rename it and call it the same thing, but I'm going to put 1080 here so that I don't forget. Make sure you put it in the same folder so you don't lose it. Click on Save. And let's see. It will be quick. Close this. You can delete that. Now this is my new video file right over here. And it's a much more manageable size. So it's 3 megabytes large, and it's still in 1080p, so that means that it's still a pretty good resolution. So highly recommend making your file size smaller than what it outputs to so that it doesn't crash your computer. Alright, that is how you make a stop motion animation.